there was suddenly Sid's head on the body of a large teddy bear. You know, the phone can hypnotize you and you start scrolling, and it's the sideshows of everything. Ego freedom means the ability to distance oneself from the part one is playing in life.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it Mind Cake.
Hello and welcome to Mind Cake. How are you? I am Lee, and this is the podcast where we wade through the weird and wonderful world of well-being. Today, still just the one walloper, I'm afraid. It's me. Paul is still off doing his Edinburgh Fringe show about mental health, apparently. We should maybe get him on to talk about it. Now there is a novel thought. Anyway, if you're a regular, welcome back. Did last week not put you off? If you're new here, thank you for joining us. You are also very welcome. But just so you know, this isn't a therapy podcast. We are not experts. We are just having honest conversations because we think that's probably better than doing nothing at all. That said, Ian's been in touch and I feel that he was more confused than before following the last Stash episode, as he writes some great Scrabble words in the last episode, but unfortunately Countdown limits their words to 9 letters. First time I've had to reach for a dictionary whilst listening to a podcast. Fair play, Ian, although I don't know whether that says more about you, us, or Stash. One thing I would like to do before we get started, going back to our chat with Men Matter and my question at the start of the show, how are you? And let's not have the old, oh, I'm fine business, but none of that. Take a moment to check in with yourself and just notice where your head is at. What's your battery score out of 100? Maybe let us know. Would be interesting to see how the listeners of a podcast tenuously linked to mental health are doing. Even more interesting to see where you are by the end of this episode, because this week it's part 2 of Stash, and this is where things get proper weird. If you missed part 1, go back. Seriously, the Beatles stories alone are worth it, but you don't need it to enjoy this one, where we delve into Syd Barrett, Timothy Leary, decades of psychedelic and spiritual practice, and genuinely a sharp take on why Stash thinks your phone is quietly ruining your brain. And I cannot get out of my head the best piece of advice he'd ever been given. It's first for Mind Cake for sure, and but my life will never be the same again. You'll find out why at the end. As always, we are a completely independent show, no funding, still can't afford Paul. If you're on Facebook, follow us, invite a friend, costs you nothing, doubles our listenership. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your pods in your ear holes. Sign up for the WhatsApp group or the newsletter. All the links are in the show notes, and that's genuinely how shows like this survive. Anyway, enough of that. Let's check that oven and delve in, grab ourselves another slice of Mind Cake. One of the things I was going to mention, obviously you experienced the heavy psychedelic era of the 60s. And there was a particular episode where you went to the Black Mountains in Wales with Syd Barrett and a few friends and did a lot of LSD, which triggered a profound psychological breakup for Syd. And I'm just wondering, looking back now with all your decades of wisdom, how do you view that fine line between seeking higher consciousness and accidentally breaking the mind's protective barriers?
Well, in that particular case, you know, there was a lot of magical energy. It was a collective trip which triggered an extraordinary alternate reality type of state. And at some point, Syd Barrett and I were playfully like two knights jousting, and in this sort of psychedelic haze that can happen because you're not really in control in that sense. This was before I went to Asia on the journey to the East. It was very much that the decision came very much at that time to leave for Asia. And in this particular case, there was a sort of psychic frontier that was accidentally broken, and Sid and I found ourselves in this very odd kind of nursery full of stuffed, oversized toys. The walls had a kind of satin duvet on them, and with lots of cushions, and it was very comfortable. And at some point, I mean, there was suddenly Sid's head on the body of a large teddy bear. When we came out of supposedly coming down, Sid was behaving in a completely bizarre manner. And his girlfriend said, "Oh, Sid, what's the matter with you? You look like some huge teddy bear." Henceforth, Sid was never the same. Not, you know, it was part of himself was lost in that, in part of his consciousness remained behind. So if you've ever seen the film The Exterminating Angel by Luis Buñuel, that was very much the kind of magical reality that you know, an invisible barrier. And I felt intuitively that you would have had to reconstitute the exact circumstances, just like in the film, to go back and pull that missing part of Sid out of the thing. But obviously, it was a fleeting intuition. Nothing like that ever happened, and the rest is history.
I mentioned earlier, well, when we were chatting off air, that I happened to watch a documentary on Timothy Leary last night, talking about
Oh,
LSD and drugs and what have you, who I believe you met whilst he was a fugitive in Switzerland in 1972. And he
yes, we became very close friends.
and he based a character
Over
on you in his book, didn't he?
Yes, I'm Prince Alexis in a character called Prince Alexis, thinly fictionalized version of myself in that book, The
The
Intelligence
intelligence
Agents.
agents, yeah, yeah.
And he tells the real life adventure that we underwent on the Rigi Kulm, a mountain in Switzerland, which he and Brian Barrett had decided they wanted to climb down from on the what was it, the southern or the northern side? I can't remember which, but basically the side on which there's no cable car and there's certainly no footpath down. And it was full of ice and snow, and those guys were, they sort of said, "Oh, go back if you don't, if you chicken out, go back down with the girls." And I felt that I couldn't leave them on their own device. And then we had this extraordinary adventure where we very nearly all got killed, but miraculously we made it down in one piece. And we were absurdly dressed for such an expedition. Anyway, that's one of the things. And we had, I saw a lot of Timothy Leary over the years. I stayed with him in California on I think it must have been 1980 or thereabouts, or in the early 80s. And then when I moved to California, I still saw him just before he died. He was a fabulous character, Timothy, and such a warm-hearted person.
Hmm.
But tripping with Timothy, you would have thought was like going around the track with the Formula One champion, and instead he was like suddenly in a panic. What do we do now, Stash? All this kind of thing. Anyway,
I'm just wondering as well. I mean, I've not done LSD, but I'm just wondering when you have this, I can't remember what the percentage is, but we only use as humans a certain percentage of our brain power. I just wonder, do you still think that, having these trips, encounters, whatever you want to call them, is a way of opening up your mind to other possibilities and other ways of living?
it's like being and feeling, but in a very uncontrolled manner, a host of extraordinary possibilities. I never did it for fun, as it were, and I was very much against tripping the light fantastic, as it was called.
Hmm.
That is, dropping acid for the hell of it and all that. I always did it with the sense of trying to facilitate a journey within in a fairly ceremonial manner, and
Hmm.
invariably it brought about a lot of things. Mind you, I never abused it. I did a certain number of these trips, and I did not repeatedly go back to the source like some people did,
Hmm.
because you develop, it's not recommended, and it's certainly not something that you should do. It's not a panacea. It's possible with psychedelics to get over some traumatic things. There's certainly a guided experience can help you in cases of post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. It's all there are many things that can be helped by psychedelics, but I am against the sort of panacea type of argument. It's not a panacea.
No, and I've heard, I've been watching quite a few documentaries recently about saying that, the whole thing in the 60s with LSD and other, mushrooms and what have you was really helping sort of people's mental health. And then there's a conspiracy theory that this was all kind of hushed by the pharmaceutical companies because they couldn't make, money out of it. And maybe things are starting to swing back the other way. And I just wondered, again, with your experience, what's your thoughts on where we are at the moment with mental health?
There's an element in the perception of reality which shows that unless one is able to see the theatrical aspect of so-called reality and to distance oneself from an emotional identification with a reactive identification with the outrageous things that appear to be going on and that are there to trigger a response. The media exploits a certain sensationalism and for specific purposes. And there is an element, I always advocate something which I've termed ego freedom as opposed to egolessness, which is really the wrong emphasis. You cannot, if you decide to do without the ego, it's like you decide to shoot up your own vehicle. Oh, I don't, that's very counterproductive. But ego freedom means the ability to distance oneself from the part one is playing in life and the actor behind the scenes. Not to use such a worn out term as consciousness, but there is a pure energy which really is at the source of what was ancient gnosis. It's not who one is, but what one one is still, despite being born into a material existence.
Mm-hmm. I just wonder as well. I mean, we chatted earlier a little bit about how you sort of grabbed another generation with TikTok. And again, do you think that the rise of social media has had an impact on people's mental health?
Probably not a very positive one,
Mm.
because the what I see happening is that one is, the Timothy Leary, to go back to him, he said the nervous system is a sensation junkie, and the idea that the phone can hypnotize you and you start scrolling and you're suddenly, whether it's Substack or any other thing, Facebook or what have you, you're suddenly looking through things with a you're not really concentrating on any one given subject, because it's the sideshows of everything, and life, and to a lot of young people, they've grown up with the phone. They've entertained themselves with the phone and playing games and so on. So the phone becomes their entire life, and the response to the identity that they create via the phone,
Mm.
they express their enthusiasm or their outrage online, and if they're dissed online or ghosted, as they put it, and all that, they're heartbroken. It's a very, very pathetic type of state of affairs, that one gets so drawn into this thing that should be happening. I don't think it could be a positive thing, but there's this ultimate distraction is dilution
Mm. Mm.
of attention, of concentration, of anything that you could term as being valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, even sitting on the train, if you're going to work now, there used to be a time when you would sit and watch the condensation run down the window because there's literally nothing else to do. Whereas now, everybody's head is just buried in their phone. When do you, me included, I'm not as bad as a lot of people, but when do you actually sit in silence with yourself and not have those distractions? Because, like you say, everybody is immediately available on their phone.
Yeah, and are they available or are they not? A lot of people only text and don't want to speak
Yeah, yeah.
and so on. I find it, for the longest time, I didn't have a phone at all, which annoyed a lot of people. And I still am not reachable by ordinary phone. That means that when I go out, I don't normally use the phone to guide myself, or it's very, very useful tool, but I don't like the idea of being available 24/7.
No, no, absolutely not. So what do you do? I imagine I'm getting a good tour of your house as you're walking around with your mobile. I imagine you're surrounded by lovely countryside. What do you do to relax or unwind or switch off?
Well, I've got 1,000 different projects, including playing music. So I will sit at the keyboards, playing. This morning I got up and played a cathedral organ, for instance, and then played harpsichord, and I just improvise and enjoy playing, just playing improvised music, not playing tunes, certainly not playing other people's music.
Hmm.
And so music has a very, very important, plays a very important part in my life.
Very therapeutic.
Indeed. And
So
playing music rather
yes,
than just listening to it is really, really good for the brain.
it's something that I've always fancied doing. I've never done it, and I think it's something that I would enjoy.
But it's wonderful when you can make it your own. Ike Turner was a great musical genius and was my musical mentor in that sense. And he reproved me for making excuses about doing something on the guitar, about not being able to do it because of this and that. And he said, no, 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 you just do it and make it your own. And so that was a breakthrough,
Hmm.
very much a breakthrough.
Am I right in saying that you were, when you were with Vince Taylor, you were a drummer?
No, I wasn't a drummer. I was a percussion. I played percussion instruments, tambourine, maracas, stuff
Ah,
like
okay,
that.
right.
No, no, no. The drummer was a very famous English rock and roll drummer, Bobby Woodman Clark, who was perhaps the first person in rock to play with double bass drums.
Oh, okay. So, in your long and colourful life, what do you think is the best piece of advice you've been given?
Well, as a very young man and aspiring singer, because I was also the second singer in the Vince Taylor band, Tony Williams said, "Hey kid, don't ever let a girl make you come before the show because it ruins your high range," he said. So I loved that because he could hit those really, really high notes in Only You. And
There you go. Well, that wasn't but it's possibly the most practical piece of advice, but I think we've ever had on Mind Cake.
it's very highly debatable whether this picture, yeah.
Prince Stash, it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to dive into your world today. I feel that we could have talked for another couple of hours, but thank you for sharing your wisdom and spending your time with us. I
We
really
could.
appreciate it.
We could indeed. So don't hesitate to call again if you want to
I
hear
would love
more.
to. Yeah,
Uh,
I'll keep you to that. Let's do another episode in the future. Thanks so much for your
thank
time.
you. Thank you. Thank
Take
you,
care.
Lee.
Have a good evening.
Bye bye. You too.
Oh, where do we start with that? Pick the bones out of it. Sid Barrett with a teddy bear head, Timothy Leary calling up in a panic mid-trip, and Vince Clarke from the Platters. That piece of advice has genuinely changed my life. I will never be the same again. Not because I'm a singer, but because I won't be able to hear only you, that note, without thinking of, well, you know. I was not expecting to be discussing such things on a wellbeing podcast on a Tuesday, but here we are. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. It's been one of the strangest and most fascinating episodes I think we've ever done. Thank you to Prince Stash. That's him done, for now at least. He said he'd come back, so don't be surprised if that's not the last you've heard from him. What else has been happening? If you've been on the socials, I'm here to say I'm okay. I went a bit bling with a pinky ring after listening to Stash. My wife looked at me like a bulldog licking piss off a nettle when she saw it. Cousin Carrie thought I was having a midlife crisis and staged an intervention. So just to let you know, I am okay. I'm a bit traumatised, but I'm okay. You may also have seen that we were gifted, very kindly gifted, very colourful "Don't be a dick" stickers. They really made my day. All I will say is they were sent in as a surprise by a previous guest. Can you guess who that is? So thank you for that. Yes, very much, very much made me smile. What else has been going on? Well, I went to the Scottish Mental Health Arts Network event at the Fringe on Saturday, which was fab. Bryony Cummings and Felicity Ward talking about their shows about mental health at the Edinburgh Festival and what they learned from the experience. They also talked about safety for performers and audiences when there are now so many shows about mental health. Frankie McNair, for example, was doing a show, really well acclaimed show, comedy show, about her sexual abuse as a child. And the people I've spoken to it say it's very good, but it's obviously some of the darkest comedy they've ever come across. And I suppose what we were discussing is, if you sat through that for an hour, where do you go when bang, the lights come up, and then you're just let back out into Edinburgh when you've just sat through that for an hour? Equally for the performers, how do you manage, how do you cope with doing 30, 40 shows night after night with the same material? It must be very intense for audiences and performers. So it was an interesting discussion. Talking of which, did you check in with yourself again at the end of the show? Where are you sitting? Don't say in the car. Ian's going to message you. He's in the car. But are you about the same? Are you a bit better? Hopefully not worse. We wouldn't be a very good wellbeing podcast if you felt worse about yourself after you've listened to the show. So, and we can't put that on the poster. If you're a long-term listener, it's your own bloody fault. You know what you're signing up for by now, but let us know. It would be interesting to see where people are, and whether, also checks whether people are listening till the end, doesn't it? So let us know. As always, thank you for being here, and if you enjoy listening as much as we like making this ramshackle show we call Mindcake, give us a follow or subscribe on the pod platform that you listen on. Share an episode with a mate or an enemy if you want to punish them. It really helps. And I know Izzy's cartwheels are better than the newsletter, but humour me. Sign up. You might just like it. So, once again, thank you for listening. And in the words of Dr. Jan, don't be a dick.